marathon of 42 kilometers, one would obviously have to start at 5 and 10 and then go do 21 and then eventually do 42. So nobody starts by running a 42-kilometer marathon straight away. You try and run 5 kilometers, you try and run 10, you perhaps do 21 and then do 42. It's a process, it's a gradual process, and that's how people progress. So rocket companies also do the same thing. So space is typically, or rather orbit is typically 400 kilometers above the Earth, but the boundary to space is about 100 kilometers. So what companies will do is, if they want to test something simple, they want to test something at a low cost fashion, what they would do is they would first fly to the boundary of space, which is 100 kilometers above the Earth, or about 80 to 100 kilometers above the Earth. That is what is called a suborbital flight. You basically do not cross space, you just remain within that imaginary boundary, and then you just see if your rocket's preliminary systems are functioning well, whether the rocket can cross the denser face of the Earth's atmosphere, whether it can perform as designed. That is one part of the journey. So think of it like running the 10 kilometer and 21 kilometer run before doing a 42 kilometer marathon. And then today's space mission can be compared to a 42 kilometer marathon, where the rocket is going to the final destination, which is about 450 kilometers above Earth. And as you asked me about suborbital and orbit, suborbital essentially means it just goes up in a straight line and that's it. It doesn't put anything around Earth. But once something goes into orbit, it reaches a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. Average vehicles go at 100 kilometers per hour, and aircraft go at maybe 900 kilometers per hour. Fighter jets go at 2,000 kilometers per hour, but rockets go at 28,000 kilometers per hour. And of course, they have to travel 400 kilometers above the Earth. So you'll have to reach both of these parameters to put something into orbit. So that's what Skyroot is attempting today. 28,000 kilometers per hour in speed and 450 kilometers above the Earth. These are the two parameters they're looking to hit today.
Right, absolutely. And just for our viewers, of course, just to know that this mission is named after Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, who was the father of India's space program. That's why it's just so relevant at this point of time. Also, as you mentioned, that this since it's private, it's going to open the chances to other customers, and these include, of course, universities, startups, defense organizations. How are these different sectors going to benefit from this launch itself?
Typically, if you look at the global scenario, there are too many big rockets. There are private companies and governments that operate big rockets. Big rockets meaning rockets that can send anywhere between 1,000 kilograms to perhaps 20,000 or even 50,000 kilograms to space, or even maybe 60,000 kilograms to space. So there are large rockets. Think of them like trains or buses. But if you only have to take a short ride, you perhaps just need a bicycle or a two-wheeler, or you need a cab. So what if you could just send a small item on a small vehicle? That's more economical, right? That's where small rockets come into play. You don't need to send a small object on a massive truck. You just need to send a small object on a bike, or perhaps on a smaller vehicle, right? That's where small rockets come in. For small satellites especially, small satellites perhaps cannot afford to wait for the larger rockets. So what they do is, there is a unique category where there are small rockets that can cater especially to small satellites. So it's a very carefully considered business decision to cater to a niche market. So just like ride-hailing apps offer different options for vehicles, whether you want a rickshaw, or whether you want a two-wheeler, or whether you want a cab, or whether you want an SUV or a sedan. Likewise, there are different types of rockets depending on size and depending on what it needs to carry. So more passengers, more heavier loads, heavier vehicle. Less passengers, lesser loads, smaller vehicle. So that's where small rockets fit in. And small satellites fit in, and small rockets also fit in, of course. And small satellites are typically built by universities, by small companies, by enthusiasts. So that's where this whole thing comes into play. There are microelectronics that are so affordable today, and technology is so accessible. So academia, schools, in fact, also can make small satellites. So for these satellites to fly to space, rockets like Skyroot's perhaps would offer a low-cost solution to reach space, rather than waiting for a larger rocket, which might perhaps be slightly more expensive.
Right, and that's very important because, of course, that's where the private companies come in and they start to give money into this discovery and the launches of such rockets. Siddharth, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we'll be coming back to you as and when we see the launch happen. Thank you so much. Now, while the world gears up for the FIFA World Cup final between Argentina and Spain on Sunday, there is one more game left to be played. England and France face off in the third-place match later today in Miami, and it might not be a game of much significance when compared to the World Cup final. And England head coach Thomas Tuchel isn't too excited about the match either. Well, what he said is, and I'm just quoting him here, nobody of these players, nobody of the French players wants to play for this match, and they want to play in the final. We gave everything to be in the final. Everyone plays to win the World Cup, but it is what it is. So, well, despite Tuchel's apparent disinterest, the race for the Golden Boot is still very much alive. And when it comes to the individual awards, this match is treated like any other in the tournament. The goals and assists in the game will count in the race of the Golden Boot. Kylian Mbappe, Harry Kane, and Jude Bellingham all are in the race to win the prestigious prize. France come into the clash after being outplayed by Spain in the semi-final. France were title favorites, and they will definitely be disappointed with missing out on the final as well. But a third straight finish on the podium is still an impressive feat for Mbappe and company. As for England, it was the same old story in the semi-final as Argentina once again broke their hearts, but the Three Lions have the chance to finish third for the first time ever. And apart from winning the title in 1996, their best finish is fourth, having lost their previous two third-place playoffs in 2018 and 1999. All right, we were just getting some live visuals from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, Andhra Pradesh, where India's first private orbital rocket, Vikram-1, is set to lift off. And just for people just joining in, this is the visuals coming in from Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh in India, where India's first privately built orbital rocket is to be launched. It has been developed by a private company called Skyroot Aerospace. It's a Hyderabad-based space startup, and this is the first time an Indian private company is trying to launch a rocket into the orbit from the Indian soil. Now, why is this mission important? Is because ISRO has launched multiple rockets for decades now, but now private Indian companies are also building these rockets. And if this becomes successful, India will be joining the countries where private companies can independently launch satellites, which is similar to what SpaceX has been doing in the United States. Now, the mission is called Agman, and Agman in Sanskrit, and in translating into English, it means arrival. It symbolizes the arrival of India's private space industry into the orbital launches. And talking about the company that will be launching where this rocket belongs to, it's called Skyroot Aerospace. It was founded in 2018. Its headquarters lies in Hyderabad, and it was founded by former ISRO scientists. And their goal is to build affordable rockets for launching small satellites. Now, about this mission, it has been named after Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, known as the father of the Indian space program. Now, this is an orbital rocket launch. Now, the difference between suborbital and orbital rocket is because suborbital rocket, it goes to space and it comes back. When it comes to orbital rocket, it goes fast enough to place satellites around the Earth.
All right. We're getting updates from the mission control teams. The hold that you observe on your screens was due to a hold raised by the navigation team.
Vehicle directed to launch control. Please do the needful pre-exercises to reinitiate ALS and confirm your readiness.
And we've gotten confirmation that we will be starting ALS shortly. So please stay tuned. So we had a planned hold, and we've just heard from the mission teams below that we are ready to restart the automatic launch sequence shortly. And just to recap once again, Vikram-1 is on the launch pad. It's ready and eagerly awaiting its first test flight. We've had the initiation of the automatic launch sequence, and through that we've completed the internal power switchover, which means the vehicle is now powering itself using its own batteries. We've also had the null checks been completed, and we're now waiting for the next window to come about for the ALS to restart?
So now that we know that the ALS is on hold and soon we'll be back with a new time and the restart of ALS, let's talk about the entire journey of Vikram-1, the mission sequence. Now we know that first 100 seconds of the flight, the stage 1 will power the rocket to the denser layers of the atmosphere, and exactly at an altitude of 53 kilometers at 103 seconds, the stage 1 burnout will happen and the stage separation will initiate. And after that, the stage 2 will ignite and it will power the rocket through the thinner layers of the atmosphere while keeping the same level of acceleration. That is the point. And later on in the stage 2, during the stage 2 burn duration, later half, you have the payload fairing and it separates, and this is the first time when the payload or the satellite is exposed to the atmosphere or to the space, the higher layers of atmosphere, which is exactly...
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. On Wings this week, we cover hospitality, a trend on the rise in India. Also, how tourists flock to Kashmir's Dal Lake, even as the region struggles with its water resources. We also cover the unique wedding festival in North Macedonia. Only on WION, World is One.
From roads that don't just carry traffic, but talk to the cars driving on them. To artificial intelligence helping an artist defy the limits of ALS. From AI systems guiding rescuers through disaster zones where every second counts, to the next generation of robots that don't just move, but express, respond, and connect. The future of technology isn't just getting smarter, it's changing how we live. All this and more in this episode of Tech It Out at These Times.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. More than 200,000 civilian homes have been destroyed. This looks like it used to be a toy for a little girl. Can't but wonder while I'm walking between all of this rubble, how many lives were destroyed, how many kids were traumatized, how many women lost their families. If this isn't a war crime, then what is? From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Radi Francis for WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Vielleicht nur als
All right, these are the visuals coming in from India's Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh, where Skyroot company, it's an aerospace, a private company, which is launching its first privately built orbital rocket, Vikram-1. It has been developed by Skyroot Aerospace, a Hyderabad-based space startup, and this is the first time an Indian private company is trying to launch a rocket into the orbit from the Indian soil. Now, the mission, of course, is about India joining different countries where private companies can independently launch satellites, similar to what SpaceX has been doing in the United States. The mission is called Agman, which means arrival in Sanskrit. It symbolizes the arrival of India's private space industry into the orbital launches.
Many of the times, one of the questions that comes is, why space? You know, it's so hard. Getting to space is hard enough. Getting to space on the first try is even
All
harder.
stations to note,
So if it's so hard,
the launch
why do
of
it at all?
Vikram-1 mission Agman.
What does it hold of such huge importance that we want to strive for making to the stars?
I mean, if you think about it, all the activities that, happen on Earth, they are connected in some or the other way to space. Space has quietly become a part of our daily life. Every weather forecast, every map that guides us home, every digital payment and long distance call leans on us. It all leans on a satellite somewhere overhead.
And I mean, it's like the human curiosity that takes you really farther. And like humans, we actually like complex things, and we just it's not just enough to stay on one planet. And so that's why the man decided to take a decision to set.
Or we go back to visuals when we see the launch happening in India's Sriharikota. Moving on to other global news, residents of Venice are protesting what they call American flamboyance. And they're protesting against the arrival of billionaire U.S. ambassador to Italy, who is on a diplomatic tour on his luxury yacht. Fertitta arrived in St. Mark's Basin in Venice as part of a coastal diplomacy tour marking the 250th anniversary of American independence. Italian residents have criticized his arrival in a yacht, calling it American apathy for the problems caused by the United States for upending the post-World War II global order. Now, protesters have marched to the arrival venue carrying inflatable water toys and beach balls. They were carrying protest signs that read, and I'm reading out here, Venezia non si use, a play on words meaning Venice is not to be used. Now, the demonstrations also took a slightly violent turn as the protesters clashed briefly with the police. Protesters have argued that their cause is not just to resist this one luxury boat, but the model that represents collusion of wealth and power.
I think it really represents a model, the arrogance of these billionaires that are associated with huge political power, which is exactly the model that the Trump administration is promoting since its since the beginning, actually. So yeah, we're protesting against this, the concentration of wealth, the concentration of political power. We see how, what are the politics that the Trump administration is advancing,
Now, in a social media post, Fertitta stated that his tour insisted the shared history between the U.S. and Italy were advocating for peaceful protests. Reports suggest that this is the same group that had earlier protested the wedding of Jeff Bezos with Lauren Sanchez. Fertitta's arrival has met with similar criticism, but his visit is critical to bilateral relations as it comes at a time when Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is involved in an on-and-off war of words with President Trump. Now, a powerful 7.3 magnitude earthquake has struck southern Mexico, sending strong tremors across parts of Central America. The quake triggered a brief tsunami warning, forced evacuations in several cities, and sparked panic as residents rushed out of buildings. And authorities are now assessing the damage, with no major casualties reported so far. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, a 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Mexico's southern Chiapas state on Friday. The shallow quake was centered offshore, causing strong shaking across Chiapas and Oaxaca, as well as neighboring Guatemala and El Salvador. Now, the quake triggered a tsunami warning for parts of the Pacific coast. But U.S. authorities later lifted the alert after determining the threat had passed. Mexican officials advised people to stay away from beaches as a precaution, saying sea levels could rise by up to half a meter. Well, more than 30 aftershocks followed the main quake, with the strongest measuring 6.8. In Mexico's Chiapas state, frightened residents evacuated buildings, while in Guatemala City, offices and public buildings were cleared and some schools near the Mexican border suspended classes.
So far, no, there is no structural damage except for this building you can see here behind me. It appears to have some cracks. Physically, that is what we can see. The personnel from the department in charge of the area, the inspectors and engineers, have just arrived to assess how much damage the structure of this building may have.
In Quetzaltenango, western Guatemala, parts of a wall at a bus station collapsed, leaving debris scattered across the area. Emergency crews, engineers, and civil protection teams have been deployed to inspect buildings and assess damage. Authorities in Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador say no major structural damage or casualties have been reported so far, though inspections are continuing. Southern Mexico and Central America lie along active tectonic plate boundaries, making the region one of the world's most earthquake-prone zones. Well, that's all in this bulletin, but news and updates will follow on the other side of a very short break. You're watching WION World. The defending champions Argentina take on Spain in the 2026 FIFA World Cup final on 19th of July. And just a reminder to our viewers in India that you can watch the match final live on Z5. Tune in and don't miss the biggest night in football.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week, creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION World is One.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. More than 200,000 civilian homes have been destroyed. This looks like it used to be a toy for a little girl. Can't but wonder while I'm walking between all of this rubble, how many lives were destroyed, how many kids were traumatized, how many women lost their families. If this isn't a war crime, then what is? From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Radi Francis for WION World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Modi Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
We're going back to live visuals from Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh, where India's first private orbital rocket Vikram-1 is all set to lift off. Now, this is, of course, the first privately built orbital rocket, which will be launched in a short time from now. Now, this mission marks the first attempt by an Indian private company to place a rocket into the orbit from Indian soil, highlighting the rapid growth of the country's commercial space sector, following space reforms that had opened launch opportunities to private players. And of course, we have our principal correspondent, Siddharth MB, joining us live from Sriharikota. Siddharth, of course, there has been some sort of delay, of course, where we know that it's going to be launched very soon. Tell us about the delay that we're having and, of course, more information about this launch, if you can tell us.
See, what happens in the final moments before a launch during the countdown is that essentially there are so many computers that are tracking vital parameters of the rocket. So as this countdown happens, think of it like wearing a smartwatch and perhaps working out. The smartwatch tracks our vital parameters and it gives us immediate feedback. So let's say the smartwatch detects unusual heartbeat or very high heartbeat when somebody is working out, that means it's sending an alarm signal. The smartwatch is sort of trying to send an alarm signal saying that one should take care of oneself, right? The rocket systems essentially do that, because when the rocket is on the launch pad, it's being monitored by thousands of systems. It's being monitored in such a way that so many parameters are being checked out, which means there are so many check boxes, and automatically the computer and the software that the team has designed will verify all these parameters and see if everything is going well. So that's what is usually undergoing. That's what usually happens just in the run up to the launch. And when that happened sometime back, there was some issue with the navigation related system, and that's what Skyroot just announced, that there was some issue pertaining to the navigation system, and they said it was a planned hold, because the moment a computer detects something is off, it will give you an alert, and then you have the decision to halt or not. So if you really have to halt it, then you take a decision and halt it. So ultimately the control is vested with the people, but yes, computers do provide alerts, and that's what happened. But now we can expect launch in another 3 minutes from now, because it's been rescheduled to 12:05.
All right, of course, we'll be waiting for that to happen with all the positiveness. Of course, tell us about this, of course, how different this is from a normal launch, because, of course, this is a private company, which is fairly new. 2018 was when this the company was launched, Skyroot Aerospace. Talk about this company for us, and, of course, how do we enter this private space now with this launch?
See, different countries have had different trajectories on how their space programs began, because if you look at India, it was in the early 1960s that Dr. Vikram Sarabhai thought of establishing ISRO, and it began in a fishing hamlet in Thiruvananthapuram, Tumba in Kerala. And slowly ISRO grew over the years, and 6 decades later, here we are today with ISRO, an agency that has helped India soft land on the moon with Chandrayaan-3. So that's the kind of development we've had with ISRO. But on the other hand, there are several other countries that have had parallel development of government and private space industries, where, you know, from the very start or from the initial stage itself, there have been government agencies. Let's take the case of the US. So just like how there's NASA, which is the National Space Agency of the government, there are also other companies that have the capability and the wherewithal to build rockets and satellites and so on. So take Boeing, take Lockheed Martin, take SpaceX. All of these companies have mushroomed over the last 7-8 decades, and these are companies that have their own capabilities. In India, the government had to unlock the sector and permit these private companies to build and launch rockets. So for that, these particular companies had to get government clearance, and that clearance came in the year 2020. That is why Skyroot gradually started their launch activity in 2022 with the first launch, and that was a trial attempt. So after succeeding the first trial, now they're taking the second trial, which is to launch to space.
Absolutely. And Siddharth, I was going to come to you because we have these seconds of these launches coming in. Let's just go and watch this live visuals coming in. Of course, I'll get back to you.
Minus 50 seconds. Minus 45 seconds. Minus 40 seconds. Minus 35 seconds. Minus 30 seconds.
Real-time programs activated.
Minus 25 seconds. Minus 20 seconds.
Minus 20 seconds is the call out now.
Minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And we have liftoff of Vikram-1, India's first private orbital launch vehicle. And we have great views coming from the tracking cameras. And isn't this quite something?
Vikram-1 ने अपनी उड़ान भर ली, प्रथम चरण का प्रज्वलन प्रारंभ हो चुका है। Vikram-1 ने प्रक्षेपण पथ को लांघकर आकाश को भेदने का निर्णय ले लिया है, एक ब्रह्मास्त्र की तरह।
That's very true, Suyash and Akhil. I'm awestruck at the sheer power that Stage 1 is producing. With this, we have two of our major prime mission objectives completed, which was successful ignition and safe tower clearance.
That's right, and we're coming up on max Q now, which is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure, where the vehicle faces its largest aerodynamic loads as it flies through this zone at Mach 1.5 at an altitude of nearly 9 kilometers.
Vikram-1 ने सफलतापूर्वक मैक्स क्षेत्र पार कर लिया है और दल
काफी +1 minute. Short to main auto.
दल काफी उत्साहित है इस समय और विक्रम-1 प्रथम चरण के आगे बढ़ रहा है और हमें श्रीहरिकोटा व पोर्ट ब्लेयर पृथ्वी स्टेशन से मजबूत दूर संकेत मिल रहे हैं, जो बहुत ही अच्छी खबर है.
That's right. We are at a downrange distance of 22 kilometers with an altitude of 34 kilometers. And on your screens right now are excellent onboard camera views from the vehicle.
And we can also see quite nominal chamber pressure values on the MCC screen.
The vehicle is currently at an altitude of 50 kilometers.
और यहाँ पे प्रथम चरण का प्रतिकरण हो चुका है और द्वितीय चरण का प्रज्वलन भी प्रारंभ हो चुका है.
This is quite a major achievement for the nation, with the vehicle successfully separating stage 1 and the ignition of stage 2 as well.
द्वितीय चरण अपना सफलतापूर्वक कार्य पूरा कर रहा है और प्रथम चरण का दहन अथवा प्रतिकरण समाप्त हो चुका है.
The vehicle is at an altitude of 89 kilometers, traveling at 2.6 kilometers per second. Of course, our target velocity for today is 7.6.
S2 performance normal.
We've just heard call out that the S2 performance or the stage 2 performance is nominal.
ये एक ऐतिहासिक क्षण है पूरे भारत और निजी अंतरिक्ष यात्रा का.
This vehicle has crossed 100 kilometers of altitude, which is the notion of edge of space, and we have reached space, guys.
Congratulations, Vikram-1 is in space.
हमारा यान अंतरिक्ष तक पहुंच चुका है.
And we've had callouts of separation of the payload fairing. We have successful payload fairing separation.
It's nearly at an altitude of 120 kilometers, and the protective fairing is no longer required and has been cleanly separated from the launch ring.
और यहाँ पे द्वितीय चरण का भी प्रतिकरण संपन्न हो चुका है और तृतीय चरण का प्रज्वलन भी प्रारंभ हो चुका है.
That's right, Akhil. We've had successful ignition of stage 3. The vehicle is currently at 157 kilometers above the Earth's surface. It is 355 kilometers downrange, traveling at nearly 4 kilometers per second. Now, the telemetry will switch over from Shar to Port Blair and further to Bogor.
अब यान अपनी अंतरिक्ष यात्रा पर निकल चुका है. तृतीय चरण का प्रज्वलन चालू है और उस
+4 minutes
की प्रतिक्रिया नियमित रूप से चल रही है.
And as you can see on your screens, we have near exact following of the intended trajectory. The two lines on your screen essentially indicate the current performance of the vehicle, and it closely matches with prediction. This is on your screen on board from stage 3. What you see is the rocket plume and the nozzle, and Earth, our home.
What a beautiful view. क्या सुंदर दृश्य है हमारी पृथ्वी का.
S3 performance normal.
और तृतीय चरण का परफॉर्मेंस अब नॉर्मल है, या कि सामान्य रूप से तृतीय चरण का संचालन प्रारंभ हो चुका है और चल रहा है.
That's right. We've had call out that the stage 3 performance is nominal.
+5 minutes.
So stage 3 has a propellant loading of 2.5 tons, and we've had burnout of the stage 3 motor as planned at T plus 5 minutes. Yes, we've gotten confirmation.
All right, so we have these visuals coming in of the Vikram-1, which is now successfully launched, and we'll go back to our principal correspondent, Siddharth MP. Of course, these are visuals we just saw, Siddharth, and we know that it is now at stage 3. Explain to us all these stages, and of course, and what are we viewing? We can see the Earth clearly, which is very interesting to see at that point.
So think of it like a relay race to reach 450 kilometers altitude. So a rocket is essentially multiple small stages put together, just like how a train is multiple small wagons put together, right? So a rocket, what it does is every particular stage has a certain task, which is why I call it a relay race. So the first stage will take the rocket past the denser layers of the atmosphere, and after that stage is propellant or fuel is burnt out, the stage detaches itself from the rocket and it falls into the ocean or it falls into the nearest uninhabited landmass. That is how typically rockets are engineered, because rockets don't need to carry dead weight, because when you are traveling against gravity, when you are going to space, every ounce that you carry matters. So the moment a particular stage or a particular portion of the rocket has exhausted its fuel, that stage detaches from the rocket and falls down. Then the next stage takes over. That's where the relay race comes in, right? One runner hands over to the next runner. So one stage hands over to the next stage, and then the next stage starts burning. So right now we're seeing the third stage perform. This rocket indeed has 4 stages. So the 3 stages, once they finish burning, then about 9 or 10 minutes into the flight, we can expect the 4th stage ignition. The 4th stage is the final one, and the 4th stage is expected to perform for a couple of minutes, and almost around 16 minutes we can expect the final outcome, whether all the satellites have been released into space. That's the final stage that we have to wait to understand. But now we are also hearing cheering from the team over here. It looks like there is another milestone that this mission has crossed. They've crossed 7.5 minutes into the flight, and now we can expect the next milestone, which would be the 4th stage ignition, perhaps around 9 or 10 minutes, which is 2 minutes more from now.
All right, absolutely. We can hear the cheers of course, everyone from there. Of course, this is the first ever private flight we're looking at, and this launch is how important this launch has now become. What we also know is that they're targeting 450 kilometer above Earth, and what we know, they've crossed already 7 minutes. It was supposed to be a 16-minute launch, wasn't it, Siddharth?
Yeah, absolutely. 16 minutes, and the vital parameters are as follows. So when a rocket is stationary on the launch pad, speed is 0 kilometers per hour. But in 16 minutes, it has to go from 0 to 28,000 kilometers per hour. So often when we compare vehicles, supercars or super bikes, we say it can go to can go from 0 to 100 in perhaps 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. That's how we compare high performance automobiles, right? But in rocketry, you don't compare things in seconds because seconds are too small a time, but we compare in minutes. And in this rocket's case, in 16 minutes, 0 to 28,000 kilometers per hour. So that's what is special about rocketry. That's why rocketry is so complicated. That's why rocketry is so fascinating. And that is why rocketry is so attractive. And this is a feat that shows the peak of engineering. This is the pinnacle of engineering, because this is how mankind has learned to defy gravity. One way of defying gravity is to fly in an airplane. Another way to defy gravity head on is to head out there on a rocket. And Skyroot is trying to do that today. And Skyroot so far is making good progress. Now we're just waiting to hear what is the final outcome on the 4th stage ignition. Any moment from now, we can hear some updates on the 4th stage ignition. That's the most crucial thing, because if that 4th stage ignites, it means the first 3 stages of the rocket have done well, and the final runner of the relay race is performing. That's what the 4th stage ignition means. So we can expect that any time from now. And so we just got the call out that the 4th stage also has ignited. So that is pretty much the final stage of the rocket that has ignited. Now, the only thing that remains is this stage will have to sustain, and it will have to take the satellites to their respective destinations and deploy them there or release them there. Basically, they are thrown out into space, and once that's done, the mission is completed. So just about 5 minutes from now, we'll know the exact outcome. So it will be a couple of minutes of suspense now as the 4th stage performs its job. This is one of the longest stages, because the satellite is required to be injected in a very precise location. So the last 50 kilometers that it travels, it will have to do so in a very precise fashion. That's what we're waiting to understand now, how it performs, how it turns out.
Right, absolutely. Of course, the first ever private launch that we have seen, an orbital launch rather, from India. We've seen by Skyrocket Aerospace. Of course, this means so much. Also, talk to us about how much this, it means to us as a private launch for us, a private company coming into space in India. ISRO has been launching rockets for some time now, and when it comes to a private company delving into the space sector, how much of a progress it means for India?
Private space companies per se were only permitted to undertake space activities in the year 2020. And now here we are in 2026 seeing a first rocket hurling towards space and just moments away from glory, right? So this is the kind of progress that these companies have made. It's not that they did not have what it takes to do this, but they needed government support, they needed government backing, and they needed, of course, policy backing as well, because it's not that these people did not have what it takes to do this. Both of them, the founders of this particular company, Bharat and Pawan, both of them were working with ISRO until 2018, or perhaps a little prior to that. And then they chose to build their own company, and they chose to make their own rocket. They were making rockets for ISRO, they were making rockets for the government of India. But they decided that why can't we turn entrepreneur and make our own rockets? So that's the decision that they've taken, and it's based on that that now we are seeing so much progress. They started the company in 2018. 2022, they did their first test launch. It went almost to 80-90 kilometers edge of space, and that was the first flight. And now here we are for the second flight, which is the flight to space itself. So huge milestone right now unfolding in front of us. We are moments away from hearing the final outcome.
Hear the cheers, absolutely. We can hear the cheers coming in from, of course, the audience, just waiting for this to become successful so that we know the result of this very important launch for India when it comes to private sector entering space in India. Also talk to us about, of course, this mission. You talked about these scientists who were working for ISRO, and then they joined this private sector. How does it, what kind of collaboration would it take place between a private and a government space research center when it comes to such missions?
So if we had to talk about this mission that's unfolding right now, Skyroot, of course, is a standalone private company. It has nothing to do with the government or with ISRO. But what is ISRO doing in this mission? ISRO is providing all the support and the infrastructure required for this launch. Because does Skyroot have a launch pad of their own? No. Skyroot has a rocket of their own. Skyroot has software and technology of their own, and they have the human resources. But what Skyroot does not have is a larger infrastructure, which is the mission control, the computers that are required to monitor, the entire infrastructure required to monitor a launch, the radars, the tracking stations, and so many equipment required are not readily available to all these companies, or maybe it is available, but it takes a huge deal of investment to build all of that up. What ISRO is doing here is ISRO is playing the role of a facilitator. ISRO is the expert in this country as far as rocketry. There's no doubt that ISRO rules rocketry in India and anything space in India. So ISRO is providing their launch pad. So Vikram-1 did not lift off from Skyroot's launch pad. Vikram-1 lifted off from ISRO's launch pad, which is the government of India's launch pad and the people of India's launch pad. So it is from there that this rocket lifted off. That is the fundamental support that ISRO is providing. Then, of course, the mentorship, the support, the guidance, reviews, technical reviews, then mentorship for the team, then helping them along the way to get various clearances, because to launch a rocket, you need to first notify a large area. You need to ensure that no flights fly anywhere within the vicinity of that rocket launch. You need to ensure that the entire sea lanes in that vicinity are clear, because for hundreds of kilometers, there is a high possibility that a rocket stage could fall anywhere into the ocean after it is ditched mid-flight. So all of these possibilities are there. There are so many clearances that government agencies have to provide: airspace clearances, waterway clearances, and the oceans. All of these clearances are required. And of course, rocketry is a risky business. So, in case there's something that really goes wrong, there also has to be insurance that has to be taken to ensure that in any case of mishap, things are covered. So there are so many things that only ISRO knows and only ISRO can support. And that is where ISRO comes in this whole affair, where ISRO is more like the chief backer of this particular mission, be it the infrastructure, be it the guidance, and so on.
Right. Well, we've finally seen the successful launch of the Orbital rocket as of now. What we're, of course, going to be looking for what happens next is, of course, the next stage. What will happen with this and how will it affect India in terms of private sector entering space. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for joining us and giving us all the updates. And, of course, congratulations to you and India as well. Oh, and moving on to other news, the political landscape in Kiev has erupted into chaos as Volodymyr Zelensky faces an unprecedented leadership crisis. And thousands of fierce citizens have flooded the streets for a second straight day after the sudden sacking of his successful defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov. And the ouster has exposed explosive internal rifts, with the former minister openly accusing the military establishment of sabotaging victory. And here's a report on it. Take a look.
thunder of Russian artillery echoes along the front lines. Devastating waves of cruise missiles pound Ukrainian cities, exposing critical vulnerabilities in the nation's air defenses. The port city of Odessa once again came under deadly Russian attack. Ukrainian authorities say that Russia fired missiles which damaged more than 10 residential buildings. Even as the country bleeds from fierce frontline assaults, Ukraine has struck back with long-range drone strikes hitting deep inside Russian territory, setting strategic logistics hubs ablaze. But the real catastrophic damage is happening inside the corridors of power in Kiev, where the government is tearing itself apart. President Volodymyr Zelensky is facing an intense domestic backlash after firing his popular defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov after just 6 months in office. The shock removal has triggered mass protests in Kiev and cities across the country, an unprecedented display of civil unrest during total war.
I truly believe and hope that the government will, after all, listen to the people, that it will heed the people's demands, because this is what the people want, for the sake of our soldiers' lives and for the sake of the civilians who live under air attacks every day.
For many protesters, this is about preserving the momentum of Ukraine on the battlefield and also the technological progress they already achieved. And many of people who are here are worrying that when Mikhailo Fedorov will be dismissed, all those efforts will be in vain and could be reversed under the new leadership.
Mikhailo Fedorov, speaking to reporters in an underground garage, delivered his sharpest public criticism yet of Ukraine's war strategy, defense corruption and military leadership.
I promise that we need to talk like adults. In fact, we have no other choice if we want to defeat the enemy asymmetrically with minimal losses, where strong leaders and commanders will develop and won't be suppressed, written off, sent away, squeezed out, and so on. A modern organization based on technology requires leadership in management.
Public anger in Ukraine is reaching a boiling point over Zelensky's refusal to hold democratic elections, with critics accusing the administration of using martial law to shield systemic corruption. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to this bulletin. And news and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching WION World is One. The defending champions, Argentina, take on Spain in the 2026 FIFA World Cup final on 19th of July. Just a reminder to our viewers in India, you can watch the match final live on Z5. Tune in and don't miss the biggest night in football.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
The Israeli drone is above our heads all the time in Lebanon. More than 200,000 civilian homes have been destroyed. This looks like it used to be a toy for a little girl. Can't but wonder while I'm walking between all of this rubble, how many lives were destroyed, how many kids were traumatized, how many women lost their families. If this isn't a war crime, then what is? From the southern suburb of Beirut, I'm Radi Francis for WION World is One.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
But I think you can get a good package in a small thing also.
I mean, for sure, we're sitting in one.
Yeah, we are.
The Mini is always punched above its weight. Its small size belies its significance in pop culture. It became an icon during the swinging 60s, and everyone from the Beatles to the British royal family to Steve McQueen drove one, a working-class man's machine that became a pop icon. Proof that things don't have to be larger than life to make an impression. If you had to choose things which you would prefer as Mini or Maxi, what would you do? What about your commute from your home to work?
Mini, any day.
And even if it's a car that you really like, and if the roads are really nice, wide and open?
So that changes the whole story, because if it's a nice car, I've got good roads, I don't mind taking the long way home.